James, what have you done? You broke my vase. Do you know how expensive it was?
I'm so sorry, sir. It was an accident. Please, sir, I'm sorry.
Grace had spent her entire life fighting battles that nobody saw. After losing her husband, she became the only person responsible for raising her son, James. Life in the village was not easy. Every day was a struggle, but Grace refused to give up because she believed her son deserved a better future. She worked from morning until night. She farmed, sold goods at the village market, and did whatever work she could find just to provide for James. Many times, she sacrificed her own comfort so her son could have enough. When there was little food in the house, she made sure James ate first. James was a gentle and hardworking boy. He respected everyone around him and always tried to help his mother. More than anything, he wanted to go to school and learn a skill that would allow him to take care of Grace one day. Whenever he saw children walking to school with their uniforms and books, he would stop and watch them with admiration. "Mama, I want to go to school too," he would say. Grace would smile, even though she knew how difficult it was. "My son, I promise you will become somebody. Your life will not end where mine started." But deep inside, Grace worried because she knew love alone was not enough. James needed an opportunity. Her only hope was her younger brother, Peter. Peter had left the village years earlier and moved to the city. Unlike Grace, he had built a comfortable life for himself. He had a good home, a wife named Margaret, and children of his own. Whenever Peter visited the village, people admired him. "Your brother is doing well in the city," the villagers would tell Grace. "He can help James have a better future." Grace believed that too. She believed her brother would remember where he came from. One day, Peter returned to the village for a family function. Relatives gathered, neighbors came to greet him, and the village was filled with conversations and laughter. Grace was happy to see him. She welcomed him warmly and prepared everything she could to make his visit special. Later that evening, after the gathering had ended, Grace sat with Peter outside their family home. The night was quiet, and the only sounds were the insects around them. Grace looked at her brother for a moment before speaking. "Peter, I need your help." Peter turned toward her. "James is growing older. I want him to have a future. I want him to go to school. I want him to learn a trade. I want him to become somebody in life." Her voice became emotional. "I have tried my best, but I cannot give him the opportunities he deserves. Please take him with you to the city. Let him stay with you. Help him become the man I know he can be." Peter looked at his nephew. James was a quiet, respectful boy. He was the kind of child who would wake up early to help his mother without being asked. Peter nodded. "Grace, don't worry. He is my nephew. I will take care of him." Those words gave Grace hope. She believed her son's life was about to change. The day James was leaving for the city, Grace packed his few belongings into a small, worn bag. She folded his clothes carefully and placed them inside as if she was packing something precious. Before he left, she held him tightly. "My son, always remember who you are. Respect your uncle. Work hard. Be patient. Never lose your kindness." James hugged his mother. "I will make you proud, Mama." Grace watched as James walked away beside Peter. She stood there until they disappeared into the distance. For the first time in many years, she allowed herself to believe that maybe her prayers had finally been answered. She did not know that the city would bring challenges she never imagined, and she did not know that the person she trusted most would become the reason her son would suffer. When James arrived in the city, everything felt different. The tall buildings, busy roads, and endless movement amazed him. He had only known village life, so the city looked like a place where dreams could come true. As James followed his uncle Peter through the streets, James held tightly to his small bag and smiled. He believed this was the beginning of a new life. When they arrived at Peter's house, James was welcomed by Margaret, Peter's wife. Margaret was a woman who cared deeply about appearances. She enjoyed the comfort and respect that came with living in the city. She dressed well, maintained a beautiful home, and wanted everything in her life to remain perfect. At first, she smiled at James. "Welcome, you are family," she said. James smiled back, believing he had finally found another place where he belonged. For the first few days, things seemed normal. He helped around the house, played with Peter and Margaret's children, and waited patiently for the moment his uncle would keep his promise. Every morning, he wondered, maybe today I will start school. Every evening, he told himself, maybe tomorrow. But days turned into weeks, and nothing happened. Whenever James asked about school, Peter always had an answer. "Be patient, James. We are making arrangements." James believed him. He trusted his uncle because his mother trusted him. But Margaret began seeing James differently. She started looking at him as a responsibility instead of family. One night, while James slept, Margaret spoke to Peter. "Peter, we need to think about this situation carefully." Peter looked at her. "What do you mean?" "We already have our own children. We have our own responsibilities. Bringing him here means more expenses, more work, and more problems." Peter frowned. "Margaret, he's my sister's son. Grace trusted me with him." Margaret shook her head. "Your sister trusted you because she does not know how difficult things are here. You cannot carry everyone's problems on your shoulders." Peter remained quiet. Margaret continued. "If he's staying here, then he should at least help around the house. We cannot be treating him like a guest forever." Slowly, Peter began listening. Instead of seeing James as the young boy his sister had entrusted to him, he started seeing him as a burden. And that was the beginning of James' heartbreak. The boy who arrived in the city carrying dreams slowly began carrying responsibilities he never expected. His days became filled with household duties. He woke up early before everyone else, he cleaned, arranged things around the house, and helped wherever he was needed. At first, James did everything happily because he believed it was temporary. He thought, maybe when Uncle keeps his promise, I will go to school. He held on to that hope. But Margaret became colder. She noticed every small mistake. If something was not done perfectly, she complained. If James finished one task, another one was waiting. The warmth he had expected from his aunt disappeared. Peter noticed some things, but he stayed silent. He told himself that Margaret was only trying to manage the home. He told himself that James would be fine. But deep down, he knew something was wrong. Meanwhile, Grace remained in the village, believing everything was going well. Whenever neighbors asked about James, she smiled proudly. "My son is in the city. He is learning. He will become somebody." She had no idea that the child she sent away with hope was slowly losing the childhood he deserved. Months passed. The little boy who arrived in the city full of hope was no longer the cheerful child he once was. He was now 13 years old, taller, quieter, stronger from years of endless work, yet he still believed that one day his uncle would keep his promise. Every night, before sleeping, James looked at the old notebook he brought from the village. It reminded him of the dream he refused to let go of. He still believed he would sit in a classroom. He still believed he would learn a trade. He still believed his uncle would remember the promise he made to his mother. But while James held on to hope, Margaret and Peter were making decisions that would change his life forever. The years that followed slowly changed James. The cheerful village boy who once arrived in the city excited had become quieter. He learned to hide his disappointment behind a calm face because he didn't want his mother to worry. Whenever Grace called, he forced himself to sound happy. "How are you, my son?" she would ask. "I'm fine, Mama," James would reply. "Are you going to school?" There would always be a short silence before he answered. "Yes, Mama, everything is going well." But everything was not going well. Peter and Margaret continued telling Grace that James was learning and preparing for his future. Whenever Grace wanted to visit, Peter always found a reason to stop her. "Don't come now, Grace. He's not around." "Where is he?" "He traveled with a friend." "Can I speak with him?" "I will call you when he returns." Grace wanted to believe her brother. She had no reason to think otherwise. She prayed for James every night and thanked God that her son was finally getting the opportunity she could not give him. In the village, whenever people asked about James, Grace proudly repeated the same words. "My son is in the city. He is learning. He will become somebody." Those words gave her comfort. She didn't know that her brother was protecting a secret. One day, after years of watching James work inside the house, Margaret made a decision. She had become convinced that James was only another responsibility they had to carry. She spoke to Peter. "Peter, we need to stop pretending. This boy cannot stay here forever." Peter looked at her. "What do you mean?" "I know someone who needs help in his house. He's a wealthy man. James will work there, and at least we will not have another expense in this house." Peter was uncomfortable. "Margaret, he's my sister's son. And you promised to take care of him. Are you taking care of him by keeping him here with no future?" Her words affected Peter. She continued, "Maybe this is even better for him. The man has money. He can teach him something. He can give him opportunities." Peter wanted to believe that she was right. He wanted to believe he was making a good decision, but the truth was that he was choosing the easier path. Instead of protecting the child his sister trusted with him, he allowed himself to be convinced. A few days later, James was told that he was going somewhere new. When he heard the news, his heart filled with hope. He thought, maybe Uncle is finally sending me to learn a trade. Maybe the promise his uncle made to his mother was finally coming true. He packed his few belongings and followed them. But he did not know he was not being taken to a school. He was not being taken to learn a trade. He was being taken to the home of a wealthy businessman named Mr. Benson. Mr. Benson lived in a large mansion, surrounded by high walls and security guards. Everything about the place showed wealth. When James entered the compound, he looked around in amazement. He thought, maybe my life is finally changing. Peter spoke with Mr. Benson privately. After the conversation, Peter turned to James. "Listen to everything you are told. Work hard. This is for your future." James nodded. He trusted his uncle. He watched as Peter walked away. For the first time, James felt something strange in his heart, a feeling he could not explain, a feeling that he had been left behind. Inside the mansion, Mr. Benson looked at him carefully. "This is the boy?" Peter nodded. Mr. Benson smiled. "He will be useful." Those words stayed in James' mind, but he still held on to hope. He believed that maybe, somehow, this was another step towards the future his mother dreamed about. He did not know that he was about to discover the truth about the people he trusted. Life inside Mr. Benson's mansion was not what James imagined. The beautiful house, expensive cars, and luxurious surroundings had made him believe he was stepping into a better future. But he soon realized that appearances could be deceiving. The mansion was full of people, yet James felt completely alone. The boy who once dreamed of school and a better life now spent his days doing whatever work was assigned to him. He carried himself quietly, hoping that if he worked hard enough, someone would finally see his efforts and help him. He still remembered his mother's words. "Never lose your kindness. Always believe that your future can be better." Those words became the strength that kept him going. One afternoon, while cleaning one of the rooms, James accidentally knocked over an expensive vase. The sound echoed through the mansion. Everyone became silent. Mr. Benson rushed into the room and saw the broken pieces on the floor. His face immediately changed.
James, what have you done? You broke my vase. Do you know how expensive it was?
I'm so sorry, sir. It was an accident. Please, sir, I'm sorry.
But Mr. Benson was not interested in his apology. The incident reminded James of something important. This was not the opportunity he had hoped for. He was not here because someone wanted to help him build a future. He was only there because someone saw him as useful. Days turned to weeks. James became more observant. He noticed how people spoke about him when they thought he wasn't listening. He noticed that nobody talked about school. Nobody talked about learning a trade. Nobody talked about the future his mother dreamed about. One evening, while passing near Mr. Benson's office, James overheard a conversation that stopped him in his tracks. Mr. Benson was speaking with Margaret, who had come to visit. "When he gets older, he will be even more useful," Mr. Benson said. "I already have plans for him. I can send him to work with my associates abroad." Margaret laughed. "At least he'll be doing something useful." James stood silently outside the door. Every word felt like a heavy stone on his heart. All this time, he had been holding on to the hope that someone would eventually help him. He had believed his uncle's promises. He had believed Margaret's excuses. He had believed that this was only temporary. But now he understood. Nobody was planning to send him to school. Nobody was planning to help him build a future. They had already decided what his life would become. Later that evening, when Margaret was preparing to leave, James gathered courage and approached her. For a moment, he thought maybe she had come to take him back. Maybe she had finally realized what was happening. "Auntie Margaret," he said quietly. She looked at him, but instead of kindness, her words broke the last piece of hope inside him. "You belong here now." James said nothing. He simply watched her walk away. That night, James sat alone and thought about his mother. He imagined Grace waiting in the village, proudly telling people that her son was doing well. He imagined her praying for him. He imagined the promise she believed his uncle had kept. And for the first time, James understood that if he wanted to change his life, he could not wait for someone else to save him. He had to save himself. He looked around the place that had become his prison and made a decision. He would rather risk everything trying to escape than spend the rest of his life accepting a future that someone else had chosen for him. James did not know where he would go. He did not know how he would survive, but he knew one thing: he could not stay there forever. That night, James made his decision. He waited until everything became quiet. The mansion that once looked like a place of opportunity now felt like a place where his dreams had been buried. With only the few belongings he had, James quietly left. He did not know where he was going. He did not know what the next day would bring, but he knew he had to fight for his own life. The city was not the same place he imagined when he first arrived with his uncle. The streets were loud, unfamiliar, and unforgiving. For the first time, James had to depend only on himself. The young boy who once dreamed of wearing a school uniform now searched for any honest work he could find. Some days were difficult. Some days he wondered if he had made the wrong decision, but every time he felt like giving up, he remembered his mother's voice. Never give up on yourself. James started doing small jobs for people around the city. He helped carry goods, cleaned shops, assisted workers, and did any honest work that allowed him to earn a little money. People noticed something different about him. Even though life had been hard, James remained respectful. He arrived on time, he worked seriously, he treated people with kindness. Slowly, people began trusting him. One day, someone introduced him to a technician who repaired air conditioners, refrigerators, and freezers. The moment James saw the work, he became interested. He had always been curious about how things worked. The technician noticed his determination. "You really want to learn this?" the man asked. James nodded. "Yes, sir. I want to build a future." That was the beginning of a new chapter. James became an apprentice. He arrived early every morning and stayed late learning everything he could. While other apprentices complained, James remained focused. He studied every detail. He learned how to repair machines, solve problems, and treat customers properly. His teacher quickly noticed that James was different. "He has something special," he would tell others. "Give him a task once and he remembers it forever." Years passed. The boy who once felt forgotten became one of the best apprentices in the workshop. When the day finally came for him to complete his training, everyone celebrated. James had not only learned a trade, he had found a purpose. At the graduation ceremony, his teacher proudly stood beside him. Among all the apprentices, James was recognized as one of the best. But after the celebration ended, reality returned. James had a skill, he had determination, but he did not have a shop. He did not have enough money to rent a place, so he continued working wherever opportunities came. The customers who met James quickly noticed his talent. They started recommending him. "Ask for James, he's the one who can fix it properly." Soon, people were no longer asking for any technician. They were asking specifically for him. "Is James coming? If James is not available, we will wait." His reputation continued growing. One of his regular customers was a successful businessman named Mr. Patrick. Mr. Patrick admired James's honesty and dedication. One day, while James was repairing an appliance in his home, Mr. Patrick asked him a simple question. "James, tell me about yourself." For years, James had kept his story hidden, but that day he opened up. He told Mr. Patrick about his mother. He told him about coming to the city with hope. He told him about disappointment, struggles, and starting again from nothing. Mr. Patrick listened quietly. When James finished speaking, he looked at him with admiration. "You have gone through a lot, but you did not allow it to make you a bad person." James smiled. "I just want to build something with my own hands." A few months later, James received an unexpected phone call. It was Mr. Patrick. "James, I have something for you." When James arrived, he could not believe what he saw. Mr. Patrick was leaving the country for business, and he owned a small shop in a busy area. "I have already paid the rent for 1 year," Mr. Patrick explained. "This place has potential. Use it. Build your future." James stood there speechless. For years, he had dreamed of having his own place. Now, someone had opened a door for him. The shop became more than a workplace. It became his home. At night, after closing, he slept there because he had nowhere else to go. But unlike before, this time he was not trapped. This time he was building something. Day by day, customers came. They saw his hard work. They saw his honesty. They saw the quality of his work. The small shop that once looked empty slowly became known throughout the city. James saved money. He moved into a proper home. He expanded his services. Soon, he was not only repairing air conditioners and refrigerators, he started selling them too. The young boy who once had nothing became a businessman. He opened more branches, he trained young apprentices, and gave others the opportunity he never received. Years later, James remembered the promise he made to his mother. He had told her he would make her proud, and he was determined to keep that promise. Years had passed since James left the village. The little boy who once left with a small bag and a heart full of hope had become a man whose name was respected. His businesses had grown beyond what he ever imagined. The small repair shop that Mr. Patrick gave him had become the beginning of something much bigger. James now owned several outlets in different cities. He sold and repaired air conditioners, refrigerators, and other appliances. Young people worked under him, learning the same skills that had changed his own life. But despite all his success, James never forgot where he came from. He never forgot his mother. But one person who heard about James's success was Peter. Peter had changed over the years. The comfortable life he once enjoyed had disappeared. The decisions he made in the past had followed him. His children, the ones he had protected while neglecting his nephew, did not become the people he hoped they would become. One of his children ended up in trouble with the law. The other struggled in life, unable to complete school and unable to find a clear direction. Peter and Margaret found themselves facing the reality they had ignored for years. The child they treated as a burden had become successful. The children they thought would secure their future had taken a different path. For the first time, Margaret began to understand the damage caused by her choices. She remembered the young boy who arrived at their home carrying a small bag. She remembered how she saw him as a problem instead of a child who needed love and guidance. She remembered every opportunity she took away from him. And now she saw the result. James had succeeded despite everything. Peter also carried his own guilt. For years, he had told himself that Margaret was the reason. He had told himself that he was only following his wife's decisions. But deep inside, he knew the truth. He had a choice. He was James's uncle. Grace trusted him, and he failed them both. Then came the day of the village celebration. People from different places returned home for the event. The village was filled with excitement. Nobody knew that the day would bring a reunion nobody expected. As Peter and Margaret arrived at the celebration, people began whispering. Some villagers recognized Margaret. That is the woman who treated her nephew badly. That is the woman who took advantage of that poor boy. The whispers grew louder. Margaret heard them. For the first time, she felt the weight of the past. She looked around and realized that people remembered what she had done. Then, suddenly, the sound of vehicles approaching filled the village. Everyone turned. A long line of expensive cars entered the village. Children ran beside them excitedly. People stepped aside, wondering who the important visitor could be. The vehicles stopped near the celebration area. Everyone watched in silence. Peter looked at the convoy and shook his head. Who is this person? He must be a very important man. The first door opened. A security guard stepped out. Then a man wearing expensive shoes stepped onto the ground. A luxury watch reflected under the sunlight. He adjusted his suit, looked around calmly, and slowly removed his sunglasses. The crowd went silent. Peter froze. Margaret's face changed completely, because standing before them was not a stranger. It was James, the same boy they thought would never become anything, the same boy they ignored, the same boy they believed they had control over, but now he stood before them as a successful businessman. Nobody moved. The entire village stood in silence as James stood beside his convoy of expensive cars. The boy they remembered leaving years ago was gone. In his place stood a confident, successful man who carried himself with dignity. People looked at him with amazement. The same villagers who once watched him leave with a small bag were now watching him return surrounded by success. Grace stood among the crowd, tears filling her eyes. She knew immediately that was her son, her James, the little boy she prayed for every night, the little boy she believed would one day become somebody. James walked toward his mother. For a moment, nobody spoke. Grace covered her mouth as tears rolled down her face. "My son!" James hugged her tightly. "Mama, I promised I would make you proud." Grace cried in his arms. She remembered every sacrifice, every difficult day, every prayer, every moment she wondered if her son was okay. And now she was seeing the answer to all those prayers. James had kept his promise. He had not forgotten her. After greeting his mother, James turned and noticed Peter and Margaret standing nearby. The atmosphere changed. Peter could not look at him. For years, he had imagined this moment, but he never imagined James would become so successful. He remembered the day Grace trusted him with her son. He remembered the promise he made, "I will take care of him." But he had failed. Peter slowly walked towards James. His eyes were filled with regret. "James," his voice broke, "I don't even know what to say." The crowd became quiet. Peter looked down. "For many years, I blamed Margaret. I told myself she was the reason things happened the way they did." He shook his head. But that was not the truth. He looked directly at James. "The truth is, I failed you." A tear rolled down his face. "I failed my sister. Grace trusted me with her son, and I did not protect you. I should have stood up for you. I should have done what was right." The villagers listened silently. Peter continued, "I allowed myself to be influenced. I made choices that hurt you. I cannot change the past, but I am truly sorry." James looked at the man who once had the power to change his life. For a moment, he remembered everything. The disappointment, the broken promises, the years he spent wondering why his uncle abandoned him. Then he looked at Peter again. Margaret stood behind him, unable to speak. The woman who once believed James would never become anything now stood before the man he had become. The villagers whispered among themselves. They remembered. They remembered the boy who was treated like he didn't matter. They remembered the woman who refused to show him kindness. Margaret looked at James and began crying. For years, she had defended her actions. She had convinced herself that she was right. But now she saw the truth. The child she thought was a burden had become the person everyone respected. Meanwhile, her own children were struggling. One was in prison, the other had failed to complete school and remained dependent on their parents, with no clear future. She realized that while she was trying to protect her own children by denying another child love and opportunity, she had failed to teach them the values that truly mattered. Her greed had not only hurt James, it had damaged her own family. Margaret walked slowly towards James. "I'm sorry." Her voice trembled. "I was wrong." She wiped away her tears. "I wish I could go back and change what I did." The crowd watched. Everyone waited for James's response. James looked at Margaret and then at Peter. He had every reason to be angry. He had every reason to refuse forgiveness. But James was no longer the frightened boy who left the village. He had grown into a man who understood that carrying hatred would only keep him connected to the pain of the past. Finally, he spoke. "I forgave you a long time ago." Everyone became silent. James continued, "But I hope you have learned something." He looked at Margaret. "Every child deserves kindness. Every child deserves love, guidance, and a chance to become something." He turned to Peter. "And every promise made to a child matters." Peter lowered his head, crying. James stepped forward and embraced his uncle. It was not because he forgot what happened. It was because he refused to let the pain of his past control the person he had become. Grace watched her son with pride. The same child she once sent away with nothing had returned with everything. Not just wealth, not just success, but a heart that survived pain without becoming cruel. That day, the entire village witnessed a powerful lesson. People may take away your opportunities, they may underestimate you, they may hurt you, but they cannot stop someone who refuses to give up. James looked around the village, remembering where his journey began. The small house, the struggles, the sacrifices, the prayers. Everything had led him to this moment, and the promise he made to his mother had finally been fulfilled. He had become somebody. But James did not just come back for a visit. He came back to fulfill a promise. He remembered the small house where his mother had struggled. He remembered the nights she went without food so he could eat. He remembered every sacrifice she made. So James built his mother a beautiful modern house in the village. The old house where Grace had suffered was replaced with a comfortable home that showed her how much her sacrifices meant. When the villagers saw what James had done, they were amazed. They gathered around the new house, talking among themselves. "Look at what Grace's son has become. She sacrificed everything for him, and now he has honored her." The news spread throughout the village.